Good afternoon, Good Shepherd. It is Wednesday, August 26th, the last Wednesday of August. Wow, the summer is gone. Most kids are back in school, and we're looking at September right around the corner. Amazing, amazing. Um, I think I've mentioned to you before that many preachers preach to themselves. When we write our sermons, or at least when I write my sermon, I'm often writing to myself. Um, and every so often, I actually listen, listen to what I had to say. And so today I'd like to talk a little bit about the fact that I actually listened to what I said. Part of it was churned up by um, some of the conversations in faith forums. Some of it has been churned up by conversations that I've had with outreach committee. So there's been a lot of stuff stirring around. But as I said last Sunday, um, there is this visceral, this really significant connection between what we profess, what we confess, and what it becomes our mission, becomes our vocation. And so I've really thought about that a lot on the last few days, and I want to share a visual with you. I'm going to share my screen, and you're going to see me on the side in a visual here um, of a Venn diagram, because I've really been thinking about outreach. And I've talked with Randy Hubbard about this. He knows that I'm doing this. Um, and I've talked with the outreach committee about some similar kinds of things. So this isn't really news to them, and it shouldn't be news to most of you. I'm not proposing anything radical. I'm just trying to open up some conversation as we move into some significant visioning as a congregation moving forward without regard to COVID. So I want to share this screen with you. And this is an image that, I don't know, maybe some other people have developed it. I've never seen anything like it, but it works for me. I tend to be pretty visually oriented. I love pictures. I love films. I love things that bring out ideas in a visual way. I started thinking about the question of outreach, and I guess this really emerged from the conversation that we had in one of the breakout groups last Sunday. Um, when we talked about the various kinds of outreach, what did outreach look like? And in that conversation, it became clear to me that there were at least three major um, facets to outreach. There's evangelism, um, preaching the good news, proclaiming by word and example the good news of God in Christ, as I have there, that line from the baptismal covenant. There's what I've chosen to call acts of charity. Will you seek and serve Christ in all persons, loving your neighbor as yourself? And this, I think, is sort of my catch-all phrase for a lot of what Good Shepherd does, whether it's going to St. Clair's and serving at St. Clair's, whether it's raising money or giving money to various organizations, or whether it's in gatherings, whether they're in gatherings of food or clothing or things like that. Those are what I would call sort of acts of charity. And then there's advocacy, striving for justice and peace among all people and respecting the dignity of every human being. These are all what I would say as actually living the heart of the gospel. They are the last three questions in the baptismal covenant. But they overlap, certainly. Volunteering can be both evangelism and an act of charity. Giving money to your favorite cause, National Audubon Society, knowing that Audubon Society advocates for birds and habitat and things like that. It's a charity to advocacy. Certain kinds of advocacy can be evangelism. All of those kinds of things. And so we can put different things that we do as Christians in those various bubbles and places where there are overlap. But what I see at the center is what we do as Christians is living the heart of the gospel. And again, those are portrayed there in those three promises from the baptismal covenant. The other two promises, I don't want to give them short shrift, but they are less focused on things outside and more focused on things inside, devoting yourself to prayer and not forsaking worshiping together. Those are certainly core to what it is to live the heart of the gospel. But in terms of reaching out, um, this is what the visual that came to me in terms of how this works. And I think that I'm not going to show another Venn diagram. I think you could do it in your mind, but we are really good with our acts of charity. That circle, I think, is very large. In some of the conversations we had last Sunday, there were those of us who recognize that evangelism is a much smaller circle for Episcopalians in general, but for folks at Good Shepherd, and advocacy similarly. The wider church, the Episcopal Church, does engage in advocacy. Certainly the Episcopal Church in Colorado engages in advocacy. But that's not has been a big a part of what Good Shepherd has been about. So anyway, I present this to you as an ideal. I've been in a lot of Episcopal churches around the country, a lot of churches of wide variety, and I've never seen any congregation that lives out this ideal as it's presented here. Some churches are larger in evangelism, or larger in advocacy, or larger in acts of charity. But as we move forward, I think to hold this image in mind, and to think about, what does our mission look like when we move out? Is our mission all about acts of charity? Or do we equip people to be evangelists? Do we empower people and give them the resources to be advocates in the same generous way that we give folks the ability to live out that acts of charity side? The second thing that I want to say this afternoon is that, of course, who we confess, what we profess, will fold into how we live this out. Our profession, our confession becomes our mission. And so I thought that for the Faith Forum, starting the second Sunday of September, we would work together on a book. I'm not telling you to buy the book. If you want to, it would help you sort of appropriate or participate in the conversation a little more deeply. A book by Marcus Borg called Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time. The cover on the left was the first cover that I bought. Now it has morphed into the cover on the right. Same book. You can find them on Amazon. You can probably get some at the library or something like that. But what Borg does in here is he really talks about how the Gospels present Jesus, the historical Jesus. And he points out that the Gospels present Jesus as a spirit person, somebody who is in touch with God. As a teacher of wisdom, you think of the parables and those kinds of things. As a social prophet, the sorts of ways that he worked with the marginalized people. And then a movement founder, he collected people to take all of that of who he was and move them forward. And I think we as Christians tend to gravitate towards one of these four categories more than another. And so I thought that it would be kind of a fun thing to do in early fall, to spend some time just working through this book. There would be 6 weeks that we would do this. It's not a very long book, which means that each week there wouldn't be much reading, but I will certainly make sure that we summarize the content of each section before we engage in conversation. I might even send out some notes ahead of time for those who haven't purchased the book. But once I think that we have done, spent some time looking at Jesus, and I think Borg does a really, really good job of presenting this. We might have a better idea of what we, not only as a congregation, but what we as individuals, where we gravitate, and how we might individually and corporately want to live out our baptismal covenant. And in closing, what I'd like to say is that I'm not trying to say that one area of the baptismal covenant is more important than another. I'm certainly not trying to say that Good Shepherd is just going to land in one area. But I'm hoping that we recognize that we have various gifts. God has given us gifts in all of these areas, and some to a greater extent than others. And the possibilities that we have now of moving forward and thinking about what this is going to look like, I think is pretty exciting. And so I hope you'll engage in the class or in the conversations. We may have other opportunities to live into some of these or to talk about some of these uh, concepts and ideas. I'm open, as always, to your thoughts, suggestions, but I anticipate a lively conversation through October. Thanks so much. I look forward to seeing you all soon.